Secretary Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair Bouquet. I want to start out by saying that I'm a big fan of this project. When I first moved to Colorado, I lived at 29 North, which is across the street from Boulder Junction, and it would have been an amazing thing to be able to get to Denver that way. Now I'm a 10-minute walk from Union Station. But I want to make sure it is critically important to me that we are good stewards of taxpayer money and that this thing comes together in a way where we don't look back 10 years later and say, why did we get ourselves into this mess? So speaking as a board member, my biggest question is, and I saw some of this in the presentation, what are the decision points when things are going to come to us? And both, is that voting on the IGA? Is that voting on the decision to go forward? How many points are there going to be before 2029 when we have to make a decision on something? And hopefully you can lay that out for me. Second question that addresses that, will we be able to pull out if there is a meaningful gap in funding, or will we have to commit before we know if there's going to be a funding gap? It's a very different decision from my perspective if the money's all there than if, oh, we're $1 billion short and we find that out 6 months after we've decided to sign on the dotted line. And then the last one would be, what additional funding sources have you identified as most likely to fill a gap if it's not the federal government, for example? And how likely do you think it'll be that there is a gap? Thanks. So yeah, just very quickly, maybe I can address part of that question to GM CEO Johnson, because obviously you're the one who's going to be bringing those decision points to us. Which ones do you know about right now based on your conversations around the IGA, there was something mentioned in there about Q2, Q3, we'd have to vote on something. So I guess I'm just trying to get a calendar in my head of when I'm going to have to make decisions and what those decisions are, as much as we know at the moment. And I'll just add one other thing. My mom is listening from home, and no, there's a point to this. Some of you, she can't hear very well because you're not speaking closely into the microphone. So for the sake of everyone watching at home, please speak directly into the microphone.
To Chris's mom, just to let you know that Director Nicholson is doing an excellent job. And we're glad that you're tuning in.
Thank you. GMCO Johnson, just a clarification for your first short-term goal. It says to increase annualized on-time performance by 1.5% for both fixed route bus and rail service. Does that include only service operated directly by RTD, or also service operated by our contractors, namely DTO and Transdev?
Ms. Johnson.
So it includes our contracted service as well. That's what I was referencing in my last response to Director Larson, recognizing that we get our data. It's basically provided to us. It's inclusive of contracted services as well.
So I'm from Northern California, as all of you know, and in Northern California, the biggest, most active public transit system is Caltrain. And I'm just going to read something from a blog about something that happened when I was just out of high school. One of the mothers in my congregation at the time, Betham in Palo Alto, where I also went, witnessed one of the suicides from her car at the Caltrain station in Palo Alto. She told her rabbi, Rabbi Janet Martyr, who in turn told her congregation. A teenage girl was crawling on all fours toward the train track pit, then back away from the tracks, then back toward the tracks, then away from the tracks, then back again, back and forth, back and forth. By the time the woman realized what was happening and started to respond, the girl was gone, and the massive double-decker, fast-moving train had screeched into the station. Nearly a dozen Palo Alto teens died that way. Finally, the city of Palo Alto put a security guard there. The guard succeeded in wrestling some 18 more teens off the tracks. Then finally, technology offered a solution: insurmountably high-set fences and surveillance cameras. This happened only a couple of years after I graduated from high school. I had friends who lost friends from that. This is a hard problem to solve, but there are things that we can actually do to address it. And we owe it to the people who have died and the people who will die if we don't do more to deal with it. Thank you. I just have a very quick point to make. So I pulled up the 2025 budget that this board last year approved. And in that budget, we had $1,233,611,000 in operating expenses for 2025. For 2024, we had $1,040,849,000 in operating expenses. Now, I'm not great at math, so I had to use a calculator, but that represents an 18.5% increase in operating expenses year over year. We're asking for or rather I'm saying Director Pagliari is asking for a 5% increase in ridership based on that 18% increase in operating expenses. I am a strong supporter because that seems quite reasonable to me.
Thank you very much, Secretary.
I had some questions, but I'll just make some comments. Once again, Director Larson, thank you for your comments. It just drives home, even though you withdrew those last 4 words. This is all about fare evasion, and it doesn't provide any guidance as to how you make people pay the fare. Do you want a bus driver to confront a non-paying person? Do you want our operators to be assaulted? That's what happens when they do this. Or do you want to hire hundreds of new people to try to increase our fare collection by $5 million, which again seems to be a number pulled out of thin air?
Thank you, Director Busick. Or Secretary Nicholson.
Yeah, very quickly to respond to Director Busick. It is not, as I understand it, our job to figure out how to do GM CEO Johnson's job. It is our job to set metrics and then say, please find ways to reduce fare evasion. Please find ways to increase, fare box recovery. I don't want to be doing that job, and I don't think we should. The second thing I'll point out very quickly is in GM CEO Johnson's original proposed goals, I'm looking at them here, she suggests nearly 2 million additional boardings as her original goal for what was originally for the increased boardings goal. I'm doing the math off the top of my head. That's $5.5 million, assuming every single person of those 2 million pays their fare. To Director Larson's point, assuming everyone in the new goal that we set pays their fare, it's well above the number that we're targeting here. I think if we can't hit 5 million, considering that the CFO, Doug McLeod, said on the record at the SMART hearings that we'd hit 68 million riders in 2025, that gets us very, very close. And that was his public projection to the state legislature. I don't think this is an unreasonable goal. Thanks.
Secretary Nicholson, you're recognized.
Thank you. So this amendment establishes clear goals for on-time performance for bus, light rail, commuter rail, and paratransit. First, the amendment reflects a minimal increase of 0.08% for commuter rail, which is running extremely well with current on-time performance north of 95%. This goal is 0.7% less than the goal proposed in the original main motion, which was a 1.5% increase in aggregate. The amendment sets a benchmark of 83% for buses and light rail. This target is both ambitious and realistic, aligning with industry standards from agencies like MTA and WMATA in Washington, which set on-time targets at 80 to 85% range. For bus, it is in line with our own past bus on-time performance over the past 5 years. Jack, that's your cue to pull up the webpage we talked about. Waiting for our executive manager. I will let him work on it and keep reading. Yes, 83% for bus and light. Our own past on-time performance, which has hovered around 83% over the past 5 years for bus. It is 1.1% higher than the goal offered in the main motion. Thank you very much. As you guys can see, we have had fairly reliably 82%, 81%, and then going back even just to 2022, 84%, 83%. So this is not, out of the realm of possibility for RTD, even in the very recent past. The light rail target is both ambitious and significantly short of where we have been in the past. Traditionally, per our dashboards, please scroll down to the light rail, our light rail on-time performance has been well above 90% consistently and fell dramatically It's a little farther down, fell dramatically over the past year. 83% is 6% above our annual OTP performance of 77% from last year. And more notably, it is 23% higher than the 59.85% on-time performance for light rail that we had in November of 2024. And I will say, when we craft the assessment tool for this goal, we should factor those data into account in how we think about the baseline. This goal is 4.5% higher than the one in the main motion, which is at 78.5%. We face significant challenges on our system right now, and we're doing critical work to make up for years of deferred maintenance. I am excited we will be completing major segments of that light rail maintenance in the next month, but we also must face the pain that our riders are feeling. We received multiple emails as public comment tonight pleading with us to take reliability more seriously. People are hurt when we are unreliable. In addition, late buses and trains disproportionately affect low-income riders, shift workers, and transit-dependent communities, people who have the fewest alternative and the highest stakes when it comes to delays. By addressing these disruptions, we're making transit more equitable and accessible for everyone. It is essential that we accomplish this goal while also showing respect for our transit workers. I trust GM CEO Johnson to accomplish this by ensuring the schedule matches our ability to run service, not by forcing our transit workers to do the impossible. This amendment also incorporates Director Ruscha's amendment on paratransit as an equally critical part of our transit network. Paratransit is RTD for thousands of our riders, and they deserve an equally reliable transit service. Riders are desperately frustrated by the failure of buses and trains to come on time. We must act decisively to respond. I ask you to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Nicholson. Director Chandler.
I'm in support of this. I am very excited that the Access-a-Ride has been added. I do think that the most vulnerable people are the ones that we should serve the best, and that is those that are dependent on the mobility that RTD brings them. So I am excited to see that as an increase, as a breakout point in this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chandler. Director Busick.
Thanks. I'm just again struggle with the numbers coming out of thin air, but also the Access-a-Ride thing. My understanding is that of all of these different services, that is one through which we do some scheduling that uses a third-party vendor. We don't have total control over how that operates. And if we have issues with a third-party vendor that affect the metric, how do we rate her on that?
CEO GM Johnson.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Busick, for the question. Yeah, I was going to seek some clarification relative to availability, recognizing that paratransit does not work like fixed route service, recognizing the parameters as prescribed for complimentary paratransit service in compliance with the ADA of 1990.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it states relative to on-time performance, but when we talk about availability, we are reliant upon individuals to deploy vehicles, some of which are done by a contractor, could be done by a third-party cab company and things of the like. So can you enlighten me as to what you actually mean by availability?
Secretary Nicholson.
Sure. I am actually going to punt this question to Director Ruscha because I added that language as an adaptation from the language in the amendment that she had proposed. So I assume she knows dramatically more than I do about why.
Director Ruscha.
Well, I did play Powerpuff football, but I did not know that Director Nicholson was going to change his proposed language. The two amendments were going to be run separately. So I'm processing because I didn't know this language was going to be up here. I guess I don't know if I'm answering the question that you posed, but what I can say is that most transit agencies, this is standard, measure OTP for Access-a-Ride by a pickup time. The other metric, which is equally important, is drop-off time. And so with this language, we're talking about the pickup time, and we actually do have really good metrics with our Access-a-Ride pickup time. We don't have a I was not going to run my final amendment after a conversation with our general manager, just because of some of the things that Director Busick had raised. So I apologize if I'm talking in circles. I didn't know the football was getting punted to me. I would be okay personally if we removed the accessoride portion of this goal, because I know that our general manager and CEO and our team are working on improving metrics and oversight. So I don't know if that means anything, but I caught the football. Thanks.
Yeah, Secretary Nicholson.
I would like to substitute the original amendment text, which you read when you first proposed the goal, to be the new. Yes, I would like to substitute the original amendment text to be the motion. Thank you.
That's getting updated.
I can tell you what it is if that's helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Just cut out the for accessoride paratransit by 2% and 15% of goal. And then change the percentages to, gosh, let me see how I did that. It was 20, 20, and 10.
Okay.
Thank you.
Director Chandler.
I'm okay with that because I understand the nuances, but I do think that we really need to obviously take into account what is happening with accessoride. That is one of the biggest complaints that I receive. And it's not only accessoride, but it's all of the mobility for those that are in needing of those services. So I'm okay with it, but I would ask that we would address this continuation in other committees and in other ways so that that doesn't get left behind.
Perfect. We have the OSS chair for it, so. Excellent. Any further discussion on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I will call the vote for the amendment that is on the screen no later than September 30th, 2025 to increase light rail service availability to 96%, 50% of goal, and to increase annualized on-time performance for fixed route bus to 83%, 20% of goal, for light rail to 83%, 20% of goal, and for commuter rail to 96%, 10% of goal. Okay, I will do the roll call. Treasurer Banker.
Yes.
Director Busick.
Nope.
Director Catlin.
Yes.
Director Chandler.
Yes.
Director Geisinger.
No.
I heard no. Director Guchenritter.
Yes.
Director Guzman.
No.
Director Harwig.
Yes.
Director Larson.
Yes.
Director or Secretary Nicholson.
Yes.
Vice Chair O'Keefe.
No.
Director Pagliari.
Yes.
Director Risha.
Yes.
Vice Chair Whitmore.
No.
I'm also a no, but the amendment will pass 9-6.
Can I speak on the main? Sorry.
Sure, Director Nicholson.
Just very briefly, I want to recognize Director Guzman for the Herculean amount of work that he put in on this process. It has not been easy, and the needs of some of the new directors has made it that much harder. And I really appreciate both him and GM CEO Johnson and General Counsel Snyder for putting up with us through this process and being willing to listen to all of the feedback and as we figured out for the first time, how we fit into this process. So thank you to all three of you. Obviously, let's never do it this way again, but I appreciate you, being a part of it the way that you were and getting us to this point. Thanks.
On the original motion amended, originally moved by Director Busick and Director Guzman. All right, so I'll do a roll call vote. Treasurer Banker.
Yes.
Director Busick.
No.
Director Catlin.
Yes.
Director Chandler.
Yes.
Director Geisinger.
Yes.
Director Guchenritter.
Yes.
Director Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick,
Yes.
Director Larson,
Yes.
Secretary Nicholson,
Yes.
Vice Chair O'Keefe,
Yes.
Director Pagliari,
Yes.
Director Risha,
Yes.
Director Whitmore,
Yes.
and Director Bouquet. That is me. I will be a yes. So it passes 14-1. So again, as Director Guzman pointed out, I want to ensure this, and as also Director O'Keefe pointed out, make this quick. We're going to do everything possible because these are our goals, and we're going to make sure that we're supporting our CEO and GM. This has been an active discussion. It's been a difficult discussion. It's been a long discussion, but now folks are aware of how policy is made. So this is the learning lesson to us all. Report of director activities. Seeing none. Other matters. Seeing none. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Director Risha, have a great night.